Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Neurologic Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Aiden Marietta.
I'm Justin George. Thank you so much for joining us for the Neurologic Podcast. And, it's so great to be here with you all every Sunday and to be able to share our passion for podcasting and current events. And before we get into even our three segments today, we do have a lot to talk about. One of the things we want to do, first of all, is spring is in the air. We've got a lot of good, wouldn't you say, a lot of good stuff going on. Although winter's trying to make a little comeback, wouldn't you say?
That's the Midwest for you. The weather is always unpredictable.
Exactly, very unpredictable. But we have a tribute we want to do, and it's going to comprise most of segment one. We have a tribute to do. So for those of our listeners here in Indiana, in our great crossroads of America, as you know, we both are passionate about podcasting and radio stuff and media and communications. And we have a tribute to one of the greatest radio legends of all time.
Yes, especially a radio legend here in our state. We today, a few days ago, lost Bob Kevoian of the Bob and Tom Show. If for those of you who have been around for a little while, even around in the 2000s, you may remember the Bob and Tom Show. On Q95, which it still goes on as Tom Griswold does it with a team of great people on there, and they still do a really good job. Bob had retired a few years back, and recently we learned Mr. Griswold came out and confirmed that Bob sadly passed after a fight with cancer at the age of 75.
Absolutely, and it was very sad because for us, he's somebody that we had looked up to, and so many people looked up to. And Aiden, as you mentioned, even though he was retired, that he really both him and Tom were best friends like us, but
Yeah.
they also just had a dynamic that was over 30 years, and that is absolutely impressive, especially when you look at how you tie it into the theme of our podcast and our goals, as we've mentioned on our social media site. And it's just really, he is somebody that we really wanted to honor with this episode and even into the future.
And I can speak from personal experience. Growing up in my early years, a family, whenever it was in the mornings, whether it was with some family members when I was when I was down in between Brown and Bartholomew County for the first 7 years of my life, and even some time afterwards. While both Bob and Tom were still in the air, they also had Christy, one of their teammates, on there, where she would give the weather, and the dynamic, even from the older episodes to now, never changed. I mean, they would crack jokes that I probably shouldn't have been hearing in the first place. But the laughter themselves, even if they couldn't finish it, it was contagious. I mean, you were laughing along with them because it felt great to listen to. It was probably sometimes they were even a bit controversial. Because I mentioned probably in one episode, I don't remember which one. Maybe I didn't, but if anybody can find the previous one, definitely quote me if I have to. If not, I'll stand corrected. The two of them were a little infamous nationally in 1988 during the presidential election, because when then Senator Dan Quayle was selected as then Vice President George Bush Sr.'s running mate, they came out with a song called "I Spent the War in Indiana."
And we found that clip as well, and it's so interesting. It ended up just really being controversial, but in a good way.
They got in trouble for it.
They did. And, that goes to the point about how our fellow Hoosiers and known around the nation, they didn't just listen to the show. People were part of the conversation. Bob and Tom, they weren't just a radio program. They were the rhythm of somebody's commute, wherever they were listening from. And as we reflect on Bob's passing, we really want to highlight the partnership, because they showed us exactly what it means to be a cohesive team for over 30 years. And that incident is, part of it. And I say incident in a good
Yes, because they both got in trouble for it.
They did. But that longevity in the media, it's almost unheard of. And I'll say that's where we're setting the bar, Aiden and I. We started the podcast.
Yeah. Now, in no way are we saying that we would be the next Bob and Tom. I just don't think they cannot. No one will ever replace the two of them. And no one's going to replace Bob Kevoian, and no one's going to replace Tom Griswold. But, you can certainly take inspiration from how they executed it. And even as the show expanded and they had more people on, that dynamic never changed. It was all for laughter, having a good time, and, making the morning a little more interesting.
Absolutely, and that's exactly where we want to set the bar. Like you just said, Aiden, we're not going to be able to fill those big shoes, but to be able to say and use that as an example, especially for people like us who are neurodiverse together, that having this podcast, having the radio show goals, all the things that we talk about, that longevity of doing things that is something that we can absolutely fulfill. And while we will never fill their specific shoes, that they absolutely they set the bar high, and we want to follow that in terms of being consistent and doing this. This is our passion.
It is.
And it's they really set the bar high. And if you head over to bobandtom.com, you'll be able to see the tribute. But the common thread, it's the jokes and all and the professional partnership, but it's also the friendship, and it's also they were best friends, and they had that rare on-air chemistry because they could finish each other's sentences. They could anticipate the next laugh. They could anticipate so much, and that level of trust and really that special loving brotherhood like Aiden and I have, it's the gold standard, and it's exactly what we strive for right here on the Neurologic podcast and with our endeavors. And looking at through our lens, there's a deep science behind why their show it felt so right to so many people. And going back to, you were talking about your early years as well, Aiden, that when you hear like Bob, he had such a great sense of humor. Just the smile, I think, was something that was, positively contagious. And, your brain, anybody, autism or not, you have a release of Oxycontin and endorphins. And those are our body's natural feel-good chemicals. So think about all the people that heard that on the air, later digitally when things became, available online. That helps so many people. And it doesn't just lighten the mood. It synchronizes the brains of the listeners with the hosts. And that's, that dynamic. We really need that. And it was such I would say, what would you say, a community across the airwaves? It was
certainly that. Absolutely. It was very powerful. And it gives you a sense of belonging. It was on the airwaves. And, of course, our hearts go out to Bob's family, his wife, Becky, son, Toby. The tributes from so many, from comedians to, friends. And I actually saw one of our U.S. senators, Todd Young, also paid tribute recently. And I thought that was really positive to see that as well.
It was.
There's
Gary Varville.
Paid tribute.
We love his cartoons a lot, especially digressing for a moment, the debt monster.
And there was one for Thanksgiving having to do with Obama's border policies.
Exactly, and we were just going through the tributes, and somebody even said it was the most famous laugh in radio history.
Oh yeah.
And it wasn't just a radio laugh; it was a genuine, I would say, deep joy, and it's a legacy of peace and joy. If I've ever seen one that, they changed the game for national, for the syndication and everything, proving that you could be a success and keep your feet firmly planted right here in Indiana. They didn't leave our great state, both Bob and Tom, and so my heart and my prayers go out to his family and his many close friends, and it just. To everyone, to his family, his friends, and even to Tom and all the staff who were carrying that on. Thank you for sharing Bob with us all of us over the years.
Absolutely. Of course, we want to honor his spirit to his family, his friends, the entire staff. As you said, working as a team, it's very important, and I think he was the ultimate builder in making sure and doing that. And for us, we take a page out of it, working with our best friendship and bringing a sort of a same kind of chemistry, so to speak, maybe to what we do.
That's right. And rest easy, Bob, because you made the Crossroads of America a lot funnier, a lot kinder, and a lot brighter. And we really can see the incredible impact that, you had on all of us. Absolutely. And I would just say this too, that there's so much more to say, and we actually not may, but we certainly will have, because they really just, even in listening to some of the clips and going back, it's really been just the on-air dynamic and things that come natural to you and I.
Yeah.
Being able to go, okay, this is what works, this doesn't work, this is how our on-air chemistry works, and the fact that they were even open about that, and that Bob was just at ease with everything was really something.
So, yes, so. That's our tribute we wanted to pay. So coming up right here, as you've probably seen on April 6th, you may not have seen it with your eye, the Artemis 2 crew has officially made their flyby.
That's right. So they made their flyby, and it's really incredible, Aiden, because we're talking about the first humans to visit the vicinity of the moon since 1972. And NASA's tracking data and the official mission logs we were looking at, it shows that the Orion spacecraft, named Integrity, which, by the way, we love, slung around the far side of the moon, and it was now on its way back, and it's since, successfully landed. And we've got some facts from NASA.gov that we've been, looking at, and it's just a plethora of information. And didn't they didn't they break a record? I think they did,
I
according to
believe
NASA.
they did so.
Over 200,000, miles, wasn't it?
That beats the Apollo 13 record. And you might have seen the photos that they sent back. It captured the moon's far side and an in-space solar eclipse. That's it's wild.
It is. So there's so much information there about that specific mission and the other related missions and what they've captured. And, looking at the photos of the Earth is just a tiny illuminated, just, sliver in the blackness. It really, kind of puts, the local stuff in perspective. We always talk about data centers and land rights. We want to protect our home. And so thinking about it gives new meaning to, the 30,000 or, I don't know, 250,000 mile view. And that's really, it's really something. But we definitely have to keep our foundation solid.
Yes, keeping our foundation solid. And as we might have mentioned earlier, it's Autism Awareness Month, and watching this crew,
all of them,
really.
Yeah. And the reason we bring up autism awareness and really autism awareness and acceptance month, and there's been some talk about that. You think about the spacecraft working in a high pressure environment.
No easy task.
Exactly. They're relying on precise communication and understanding. They understand each other's brains to survive. That's really what it is. And that's what you and I strive for in our friendship in this podcast.
Yes. And that's a great point. They have to understand how every system works, how every person functions to reach that goal. And of course, we're doing the same thing here, learning about our own neurotransmitters, so to speak, and how we process the world so we can reach our own goals, so to speak, maybe lunar goals. A little bit of a joke there.
Exactly. I mean, we're actually planning on this huge mission. In case we didn't tell you all, we're planning on this huge mission where we have to be to the moon.
Not really.
Not really. But yeah, for those listening, if you want to see more about it, NASA, they do have the plethora of statistics. So if you go to nasa.gov/humans in space, and it's there, just go to the, an easier way would just be to go to the main website there and then just search for it. They have so much information. And we were digging into the NASA Curious Universe site when we've had the chance, and specifically the Crew Comes Home episode, and it really changed how I think about the mission, because we're always cheering for the splashdown, but the science from getting them from there is it's incredible.
Absolutely, it really is, and we both walked away with some facts that honestly sound like science fiction. I think it's what would be the first stat.
That's right. So when the Artemis second crew hit the top of the Earth's atmosphere, think about, they're not just falling, they're traveling at about 25,000 miles per hour, and it's about 7 miles per second.
It's a lot.
And at that speed, think about the air in the front of the capsule. It's not going to move out of the way fast. Or you're talking thousands and thousands of degrees Fahrenheit. And looking at how this behind that, so just the engineering that goes into this, it's really something.
It is. And think about that. 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's half as hot as the surface of the sun. But here's an interesting part about the crew's experience inside. Even though it's a literal fireball outside, NASA designed the heat shield to be so efficient that the cabin temperature only rises a few degrees. But once they hit the water, the heat shield starts soaking the heat back into the capsule, making it feel like a sauna while they wait for the Navy.
It's exactly true. And so of course, you have the splashdown, you have the Navy, they come out with the boats, and then you also got to think you're dealing with, the pressure and the way that now you're back on Earth, you have to deal with the gravity. So there's a whole just array of things. And, speaking of waiting in that sauna, here's another fact that, think about this, the crew's bodies, they've been in zero gravity. And, one of the things we were looking at, your inner ear, the equilibrium, which controls the balance, it basically sort of goes to sleep because there's no up or down. And again, some of this we're getting from nasa.gov and just the different facts. It's really cool because when they hit the water, their brains actually flood with signals they haven't felt. And so the weight, that could be something. I mean, they go through so much training, but there could be motion sickness, so they know how to deal with that.
Yes, and it's like the world's most extreme case of vertigo. And while the crew is dealing with that, fact number 3 is about the recovery teams. NASA doesn't just wing it; they have to have divers and specialists who have practiced the recovery over 30 times in the open ocean using a mock-up capsule. And they have to attach a horse collar to that capsule to keep it upright, because if it flips over the waves, the crew is stuck hanging upside down from their seats while feeling the intense nausea.
I know it's really something. I mean, it's like to think about, and it highlights the trust that they have to have in each other because, and if you go for our listeners to Curious Universe, they even talk about, whether it's this or other missions, the crew has to remain perfectly calm and follow checklists even when they're going through all this stuff, whether they're dizzy like you just mentioned with the nausea, or if it gets hot in there once the capsule goes down. And it reminds me of what we go through our own brains that. Staying grounded and focused, even when things feel a little bit, topsy turvy in life. I mean, that's one of the things too that we, it's one of the things that we contend with. Not just for those of us on the spectrum like Ada and I, but really a lot of us. It's a mission mindset.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right about being a mission mindset. And whether you're splashing down, whether it's the Pacific or just navigating a tough week, especially for us here in Indiana, you have to rely on your training and your team. If you guys want to hear the full NASA episode, we'll have it linked in our show notes. It's an incredible look at the heroes behind this whole thing. So when we come back, we're going to go into current events
and politics. It's gonna be interesting.
We got some interesting stuff for you on that, so please stay tuned. All right, now for segment 2, we are going to switch from what we just Artemis and radio legends. Of course, and I say legends in a very good way because there will never be another Bob Kevoian and never another Tom Griswold.
That's right.
But for current events, we're going to be taking a look. First, we're going to start with our neighbors in the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
The Northern Commonwealths.
Yes, the Northern Kentucky Young Republicans had a forum recently. Thomas Massey was invited, and he immediately accepted. He was there, but Eddie Gallrein was not there, was he?
No, he wasn't. And again, this is from Northern Kentucky Young Republicans on Facebook. Almost everyone under 65 is voting for me. That's what Thomas Massey said yesterday. And now the Northern Kentucky Young Republicans, they said, we understand why young Republicans are coming out by the droves to support Thomas Massey, who is the only candidate willing to talk with us and answer our questions and take his job to put Americans in a better position seriously. The Northern Kentucky Young Republicans had an incredible forum today. Of course, it was the other day, but this was posted on the same day about the forum, where Thomas Massey took difficult questions, stayed around to talk to us, and demonstrated his understanding of critical conservative policy. The 4th District is blessed to have him. Ed Gallrein was invited not only to this forum, where he would have had to answer the same questions, but declined to participate as he had in every other forum. He has further, for several months, had an open invitation to an event we would have hosted for him and him alone.
The Northern Kentucky Young Republicans are committed to ensuring every serious candidate has a platform to make their case so our members can decide who to vote for and who to volunteer for. Ed Gallrein, man, I'm getting sick just thinking about him.
Me too.
Yeah, we'll get to him in a second. Ed Gallrein declined every effort we took to give him an opportunity to gain the support of our members. Even to the minute the event started, we were clear that Ed Gallrein would be welcome with open arms to participate in this forum, where he could lay out his platform. It is deeply troubling that he did not want an audience with the young Republicans. If you refuse to engage with prospective voters, especially young adults, you are not a serious candidate. If you want someone, and this is the big part.
It is.
If you want someone to represent that district, answer your questions, and to be transparent with America's next generation of conservatives, Tom Massey is your only option.
That's right. And we're going to
So that's an official endorsement.
Yes, and we're going to introspect on that because, again, this brings us back to what we've talked about on many of episodes here on the Neurologic podcast, where, our goal is to pull back the curtain and shine a flashlight on what's going on. We do that a lot here in Indiana, Kentucky, it's one of our neighbors, and obviously one of 4 commonwealths, the other being Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. And what we're really seeing here is the career politicians, or those who are trying to become career politicians like Ed Gallrein, are trying to hide. Yeah, because there's a certain phrase.
You can't spell DEI without Eddie.
That's right. And see, here's the thing. Here in Indiana,
because DEI, that's every one of those. All 3 of those letters are in the name Eddie.
That's right. And here in Indiana, we're going to get into this in a little bit, where we're going to talk about Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith and some recent news. He even had Senator Greg Taylor on. And again, they are from opposing parties, but they got together on Lieutenant Governor Beckwith's podcast, and really just they were able to talk, and they were able to debate this.
Yeah.
And again, you're talking about people from different political parties. Where was Ed Gowrine? And this is the thing. I've been over there many times. I know we're going to be going over there as a team when we get the chance, and
That's right.
It's a nice place. And it's so close to Indiana. And folks, this is the thing. This is a forum to be able to talk to voters. It was open. It didn't cost anything to talk to voters. And I love the picture of Thomas Massey where he gives a handshake to the empty air.
Kind of like, it's a little reminiscent in a funny way. It's reminiscent when Joe Biden, remember when he was in North Carolina, and remember he turns around and he was shaking hands with nobody that was there.
It's kind of like he did the same thing in the White House when Obama was there, and he ended up just kind of looking around, and Obama was the star of the show, and
well, of course, because Obama was the center of attention. Remember, he was trying to get Obama's attention, and Obama was just
ignoring him.
Well, yeah. Well, he never liked him to begin with. Everybody knows that. The two of them hated each other.
It goes back to the 2008 primary as well, but when they were even running against each other before running mates.
Although Biden pretty much said it when he was about liking his opponents, he said the thing he liked about his opponent, Dennis Kucinich, was his wife. And if you want to know why, just figure it out for yourself.
Well, and speaking about Delaware, Chris Coons, I mean, we could go on. We could.
Carper.
Yeah, we could go on. I mean, and then you look at the three counties there politically, and there's so much to talk about there. But folks,
biggest problem's Newcastle County.
Yes, that's one of the biggest ones. And folks, we're talking about going back to raising the curtain and shining a flashlight. Is you have so many career politicians across the country. I mean, they're responsible for the debt. Thomas Massey's talked about the debt badge. He's the one that wears it, and on the infamous day on March 27th, 2020, of course, he talked about stuff. And I have to say, when he did the Tucker Carlson interview, he talked about this is a funny moment that I like about that interview, where he said some of the members they'll vote yes, and then they'll look at him in the debt badge.
Yes. Although I will point out, when he was opposing the CARES Act, there were other reps that did join him in opposing it and rose for a recorded vote.
Ken Buck even walked with him on the way out.
Ken Buck of Colorado went up in opposition to the CARES Act. I will point that out. He said, it's a big spending bill. It's going to raise the debt. It's going to cause inflation. Exactly what Massey said. And I give Ken Buck a lot of credit for that.
And yes, and by the way, there's some of the people, I give him credit for that too, and there's some of the people that are going, oh, well Massey once met Jared Polis, especially when he was a House rep and then later a governor. I'm like...
They were both in the Liberty Caucus.
Yeah, it's like, what is the... And that's a good point. They were in the Liberty Caucus. Like, you have people going after them. And again, we're young Republicans, but we don't see anything wrong with what they did. I mean, they're just it's like...
They're uncivil, it's the more libertarian streak with the two of them. They're pretty much aligned on against mass surveillance, which, of course, I agree that mass surveillance is wrong.
FISA 702 is a problem.
Yeah, FISA. He spoke against it, and unfortunately, it's probably going to get signed into law, which is a travesty. But, that's your Congress in action for the most part.
When they're actually there.
Yeah.
I mean, how many vacations have they gotten? This is the thing. How many?
Like Lindsey Graham.
Yeah, Lindsey Graham.
What's he doing with that princess wand?
Exactly.
Come on.
We'd like to know. We've got some interesting updates for you with the race there. Speaking of South Carolina, where this was actually recent. So Paul Dans, now remember, South Carolina has we could force into, when the three of them could have been a runoff situation.
Yeah.
However,
there could still be a runoff with the two of them.
That's right. However, Paul Dans, he said that, and this is from Facebook on April 16th, that he entered this race for one reason, to retire Lindsey Graham, and that they're blessed, but the state should be thriving. And so he said that he made one of the most difficult decisions in his career. He withdrew his name from the Republican Party on June 9th and gave the full endorsement to fellow patriot Mark Lynch for U.S. Senate. And he said, I did so for the same reason I entered this race. This is the best path to defeat Lindsey Graham. And I agree.
We need to get rid of Lindsey Graham. Doesn't matter what the president... I don't care if the president endorses him.
He's wrong with his endorsement.
He's wrong with the endorsement. And this isn't the first time with all due respect, this is not the first time the president's made bad endorsements. For every good person that he endorses, whether it's Marlon Stutzman, Victoria Spartz, two great members of Congress, he then endorses Lindsey Graham. Who are some other bad ones he endorsed? Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about
Mike Simpson of Idaho, who wants to give work visas to illegals on farms.
And let's talk about the gubernatorial primaries, because this is the thing. You look at what was going on in Idaho with Brad Little. Again, Janice McEachin, when you look at that race, lieutenant governor, and it's like, you got to have a movement. But there's also the issues with Ohio. We talk about Mike DeWine, and again, he was
a tyrant.
Yeah, here's the thing. He vetoed that Senate Bill 22, in the winter of 2021. The General Assembly, they came together and overrode it with a 2/3 majority. But folks, we're talking about the hypocrisy, because many of the people who call themselves conservative. They're like, oh, the Democrats shut down. The Democrats shut down. No, it was the Republicans that did that. It was the Republicans. Again, we're speaking as young Republicans.
Yeah.
It was the Republicans that did that. It was the Republicans of Virginia that moved the Overton window from it's okay to have morality as adults and a moral compass and have faith.
The McDonnell years.
Yeah. Well, but even beyond that, it was just, to have, faith as a moral compass, and not just the aspect, but actually, your God-given right to live it. It went from that, and certainly Aiden is, you saw that in the Bob McDonnell years. It went from that to it's controversial to even protect the kids from woke nonsense.
Total insanity.
Yes, and blaming it on the Democrats and specifically the far left. Yes, they've done a lot of damaging things, but as young conservatives, not you, but the establishment. You're the ones that actually created this. You're the ones that actually helped that Overton window move. You're the ones that after the shutdowns happened, we're going to go after parents, we meaning the rhinos and their appointees. We're going to go after parents at the school board meetings. We're going to do this. So that's how the Overton window shifts. And that's where it's a dangerous path, not just in Virginia, but across the country, because there go your God-given rights. And speaking of that Overton window shift, we're looking forward to seeing what's happening in South Carolina.
We hope retire Lindsey Graham. That is the biggest message of it. And not just that, retire a lot. There's a lot of rhinos that need to go.
And again, in 2022, some of the endorsements, going back to President Trump, he was wrong for endorsing Henry McMaster. Look at S19 or S915. That one, obviously that was after the endorsement. That was recent, trying to get an unelected health star and somebody who, by the way, doesn't even hold like an MD and or a PhD like Florida Surgeon General Joe Ladapo.
It could be a crony like Ralph Alvarado was, the guy who I think helped tank Matt Bevin's 2019 campaign.
That's right.
That's who Bill Lee supported to be his health commissioner.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point. Look at the executive orders, Executive Order 83 that came out in August 2021, and days after that, President Trump endorsed Bill Lee. There could have been a solid primary, and now there
was a primary in Ohio. He had the chance to endorse Congressman Jim Renacci, and he didn't.
And Jim Renacci,
he put up a good fight.
He did. Jim Renacci, I have to say, Ohio issue 1. We're pro-life. Why did issue 1?
Because
why
Mike
did that
DeWine
fail?
let it happen.
And so did then Lieutenant Governor John Husted, who got rewarded with the Senate seat.
And I'm going to go even further than that. So did Vivek Ramaswamy. He let it happen too. He didn't go down there. He didn't fight.
He didn't
and now
do anything.
all of a sudden, and as Casey Putsch says, the smooth talking dude waving around his finger like he's smart. No, he's not. We could go through a whole thing.
We could go through the whole list of everything. We could go through the whole list of just exactly what that even means. And folks, here's what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the fact that Vivek, however the heck you want to say his name, is not part of the solution to that. He's not part of the solution because what he's doing, and this is what Daniel Horowitz of Conservative Review says, he's just co-opting our talking, they're making talking points, they're co-opting our ideas, they're running candidates on it, and they're going to lose. And I say, you know what? Let him lose. Casey Putsch would be a much better governor if he actually got elected. He's against the data centers. He's against the things. You want to talk about morality?
And they get mad at him because he made a Cowboys versus Indians joke. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
it was a completely innocent joke. But maybe not the best one. Not one I would have personally made, but I don't know. It's not the worst thing you could say. But take what you want out of it. Your point is very simple. Vivek's going to lose to Amy Acton. He worked with her.
He did. And talk about morality. Vivek talks about all these things. We're going to do this. We're going to bring God back into schools, whatever.
He's not going to do that.
Exactly. He's not going to do any of that. There is no way. And this is the thing. It's the populist grifter movement. It's the populist grifters.
And not only that, I'm going to say another thing. Amy Acton, she's running. It's really scary. She's running to the right of him. And the Rob McCauley, another Rhino DeWine person, he picked that person to be his running mate, the president of the Ohio Senate. That tells you everything you need to know. And not only that, I mean, John Husted and having the Les Wexner connections, Sherrod Brown, who probably shouldn't be winning in normal terms if Ohio is as red as we would hope it is, Sherrod Brown's capitalizing off of that one, and who could blame him?
And think about even too. You look at Ohio history. Think about Bob Taft. Think about just all the different Ohio politics of the gubernatorial and the Senate, and just even looking at the local level. By the way, here's the thing. Former GOP chair Bob Paduchik. This is another sticking point. Like, he had the state central committee, This really starts at the grassroots level. Again, we're not talking about your grassroots Republicans. We're talking about the establishment career politician operatives. They also made sure that the Ohio GOP State Central Committee endorsed DeWine for re-election going back to 2022. We have squandered so much as a party, and that's why as young conservatives, Aiden and I are going to double down and continue to do. And you want to talk about morality. This brings to, as I mentioned, Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith. This is a statement he said on Friday afternoon. I was invited to be a keynote speaker at the Valparaiso High School Career Fair. After being welcomed to the stage by a student reading my official biography found on the state website, I proceeded to speak only about future job opportunities and careers for the next generation of Hoosiers. So this was
totally harmless.
Yeah, this wasn't a campaign. This was on the official side. And following my remarks, I was approached by a group of juniors and seniors eager to ask questions on a wide range of topics. As always, I gladly provided answers based on my Christian faith and conservative vays.
And you and I can attest to that because we know we've heard him do that.
We've heard him do that, and that's what it worked. And this is something that may be deemed controversial, but it's not to us. That's exactly how Aiden and I live our God-given potential, because to do otherwise is circumstantial, and it's not fair to us, especially with our diagnosis.
And of course, Vivek doesn't answer questions like that. Remember, he tried first, he wanted to be president, then he wanted to be governor. He goes, "Hey, everybody, who the heck is this skinny guy with a funny last name? What the heck is he doing in the middle of the space stage?" As Chris Christie said, he was plagiarizing Barack Obama. The amateur tendencies.
Absolutely.
Later that evening, but the statement continues. Later that evening, Valparaiso Community School Superintendent Jim McCall felt the need to issue a public apology for my appearance, referring to some of my alleged comments as offensive while stating that schools are not a platform for any political agenda. Well, then why'd you invite him if you didn't want him there? To be clear, this is the same VCS superintendent who earlier this year allowed high school and middle school students in his district to walk out of class and publicly protest ICE. How exactly would that not count as using your school as a platform for a political agenda? Sounds to me like Jim only believes in freedom of speech when it aligns with his own personal beliefs.
That's right. And then Micah's statement continued. This is horrible and dangerous. It is a horrible and dangerous message to be teaching the young minds of Valparaiso community schools. As Indiana's lieutenant governor, I've grown accustomed to these type of selective tantrums and personal attacks. No big deal. It comes with the job. But what genuinely concerns me moving forward is the chilling effect Jim McCall's absurd and reckless public apology may have on VCS students, parents, and faculty, many of whom were incredibly gracious and welcoming during my visit. In the future, will some hesitate to share their own beliefs or fail to stand for truth, fearing retribution or public shaming by the VCS administration? On a positive note, I'm told Superintendent Jim McCall has resigned his post and will be leaving Valparaiso Community Schools for a job in the private sector at the end of this school year. Here's hoping Jim's successor shows greater tolerance for Christian conservative viewpoints and focuses more on properly educating our precious children instead of promoting woke ideological conformity. God bless Micah Beckwith. And folks,
boom.
For me and Aiden, as two young conservative Christians who are on the autism spectrum, I'm bringing this up for a reason. When you have the circumstantialism, when you have the anything goes, and then you use our diagnosis against us, sorry, that doesn't work. And it comes with the territory. We know we're going to get attacked here. We know we're going to get attacked in politics because it's the arena where we engage in the battle.
We've seen it. Like when you were at one of the town halls. You asked a question.
Boo!
He answered it, and you got booed.
I mean, we're going to get that. But this is the thing. We stand with you, Micah, because we've seen in our own lives how it doesn't work.
It's not just...
When you put God as the center of everything, all decision makings, that's why we take over this media stuff. Because the conformity that he's talking about, when we've been pressured to conform to certain things, or, where everybody else does it, or maybe it's not even evil, but maybe it's like, well, other people insert whatever here. It's like, what does that even matter?
Yeah, and, before we close out this segment, it's not just these school districts that are completely bonkers. There's also so-called conservatives, if you can even call them that, not just in the assemblies, the grifters, and particularly those that one of our colleagues in media, I won't say his name because he's not worth mentioning, and he's not worth our time.
That's right.
But those who have listened very well, you might figure it out. He
also tends to monologue and not rather than do team like we do.
Yeah, but I will say, he was like going out there saying, "Oh, I should never have," I'm like, you were friends with him, and then you're like, "Oh, I can," and then he flat out admitted he conveniently just did it because he wanted ratings. How'd that turn out for him?
Not so well, and again, he's idolizing the ratings. And look, we want to grow our podcast together.
There's nothing wrong with ratings. You need to grow it organically. And actually, there was lost ratings, and the station in general that was carrying him, they were really getting hurt by it. And honestly, I bet you it was really not. I don't know what went on. I won't say anything because I don't know.
We don't want to say.
We don't want to say something that could have. Yeah, because we weren't there, so we can't speak for for any of that. But I can say to our colleague, and particular colleague, he says, "Oh, I know names of people who are saying this about that AI deepfake hoax that was supposedly in the office.
Where's the evidence?
Where's the evidence? We only know one of his friends."
And grand juries are supposed to be secret according to Indiana state law. So
why did he leak? Why did he leak it? Where are the indictments? Where's the indictments?
Where's the indictments? And by the way, and we've talked about this, when we take Neurologic to a radio show,
which we would love to do. Wink.
Yes, one of the things we've talked about is to honor whoever we're working for as co-hosts, and to do offline stuff as well, and to do whatever. Are we going to get 100% what we want?
Sure. No, of course not.
But you know what? The opportunity to co-host, we know, a lot of good people who co-host media full-time as their passion, whether it's AM, FM, or, digital or any combination. You're not going to get everything you want from a contract, but you know what? The ability to do it, that's what matters 100%.
Absolutely. So we'll go ahead and stop this segment right here. When we come back, we'll do segment 3, and we'll close it out with a lot of good stuff, so stay tuned. And now, for our final segment,
we're going to talk about autism awareness and acceptance.
We are.
And
I think we got to some things. We got to get two different things. We'll make them quick, though.
That's right. So Governor DeSantis, of course, he unveiled the statue honoring President Calvin Coolidge at the Block Tower Gardens in Florida. That was actually recently, and that was nice. President Calvin Coolidge was really
underrated. He's underrated.
Yes, and this was in Lake Wales, Florida. And this is from FloridaGov.com from the Executive Office of Governor. On April 15th, so that was recently, today Governor Ron DeSantis unveiled a new statue honoring President Calvin Coolidge at Block Tower Gardens, commemorating his enduring legacy, his impact on the Garden Sanctuary, and America's ongoing 250th anniversary celebration. The governor was joined by members and supporters of the Calvin Coolidge Presidential Foundation, which champions Coolidge's belief of limited government, fiscal responsibility, and civic virtue.
Exactly. He said Coolidge governed as a constitutionalist, eliminated debt, balanced the budget, reduced taxes, and promoted a unified American civic tradition and culture. Today, I unveiled a statue honoring President Coolidge, who dedicated Block Tower Gardens on Lake Wales in one of his last public appearances as president. As America marks its 250th anniversary, I was proud to honor President Coolidge with this new statue. And that's some good stuff right there.
Definitely it was. And he went on to continue Calvin Coolidge, known as Silent Cal, rose from humble beginnings in Vermont to become the 30th President of the United States. His leadership emphasized fiscal discipline, low taxes, and limited government, and these principles helped shape the economic expansion of the 1920s. After serving as vice president under Warren G. Harding, Coolidge assumed the presidency in 1923 following Harding's death. The location of the statue carries special Florida historical significance. And there's more to that press release, but the gist of it is that as it relates to our advocacy, that we really are going to have some more things that we're going to be bringing from President Calvin Coolidge, and just a lot of the things that we really like about him.
Yes, and before we get to the rest of what we need to do, this one is going to be something, isn't it?
Well, it is, because in Missouri,
as somebody likes to say, someone in particular likes to say,
let's talk about data centers.
Oh, boy. Yeah. I would say, we all know who that person in particular is, but we
all do, and this is from Fox 2 Now. New Festus City Council faces data center lawsuit challenge. 4 new Festus City Council members officially took office on Monday during the city's regular council meeting. Cheers from residents opposed to a data center development greeted new members, and they entered the city hall, and then during the meeting, the council chambers were filled with residents holding signs with messages expressing opposition to a data center plan that the previous council approved in March. And we both stand against data centers here, but also they're standing against it in Missouri, too.
Which is great to see. I don't think no thanks to Mike Kehoe, of course.
Exactly. And, we also think about at the federal level, Josh Hawley, that's one of the, Missouri has an interesting composition and has had an interesting composition for a while.
Well, then again, they had Claire McCaskill, so
that explains things. And there was an attorney involved. Steve Jeffrey said on Friday, all they have to do is provide 15 days notice of that decision to the developer, and that deal is canceled, and the city has to refund whatever money that has been provided to them by the developer so far. And again, this is from Fox2Now.com. And he added that there were some other folks that added that the recent election shows that the Festus community does not want the project to move forward. So that's one of the little things that we want to include before we continue the rest of our segment, just because, it's important to be involved. Say no to data centers.
Say no to data centers, and Missouri needs a change in leadership, because after all, isn't that the state that gave them Eric Greitens?
It is. And, it's like there could be so much said about him. So,
yeah.
One of the reasons we talk about all this stuff is, again, this goes back to our passion for politics and involving ideas at the governmental level, and even goes to the thing we read about Calvin Coolidge, because he had an interesting impact on Indiana, and we're kind of teasing a little bit about future topics. But when you look at what Coolidge did, and you look at that kind of thing, that there is a place for government, but it was fiscally limited. But what did it actually mean? It's not just about, we need to cut stuff.
No, it's actually getting it done.
Yes, and it was done methodical. It wasn't about just, I'm going to do this for the headlines and cut this and not leave a transition. That's why
Doge was such a failure, because it didn't do what it was supposed to do.
Exactly. It was a big failure. I mean, if you take a look at Doge, they didn't even... What was the end result?
Nothing.
They exposed stuff, but what happened? It got worse.
Yeah, it got worse
getting worse
with the so-called, because we ranted about, Massey talked about, and there were others that ranted about the so-called, bill, but it still got signed into law because somebody wanted to spend all that money. Well, they all did, and you could see Lindsey Graham. He is so giddy being there.
Of course, he's got to always be there. And how this relates to autism...
Yeah, because he loves war.
Yeah, and how this relates to autism awareness for both of us is that we see, again, the HOPE concept. We were talking about HOPE Florida. We've talked about HOPE Rising. HOPE Rising is really, they've gone good, especially under First Lady Sarah Stitt in Oklahoma, where they copied the HOPE Florida model. They have HOPE Navigators, but also they have a beautiful way of making sure that people reach their God-given potential. And one of the clarifying points we wanted to make and elaborate is the government is often the connecting point for people in need, regardless of what it is. What it does, though, without picking favorites or winners and losers, is it takes that person. And see, this is where I think it's important to adopt that here in Indiana, but across the country, where yes, it's the solution is tailored to them, but at the same time, it's not hyper individualized. It's designed so that person is not seen as a statistic. I mean, certainly you look at Florida, where they helped 33,000 people reduce or eliminate government assistance, but they did it the right way. So this relates to you and I, Aiden.
But of course, if your name's Danny Perez or
Juan Perez
or
Alex Andrade from Pensacola, where they're attacking HOPE Florida still.
Yeah, they'd love to keep those people on those and keep them hostage.
Well, and they're attacking the HOPE concept because they have no moral compass. And we can say that because there's falsehoods that have been debunked multiple times with facts by the office of Governor DeSantis, Attorney General James Youthmeyer. We could go on.
Yeah, and then, of course, here we had to deal with state representative supposedly going about this housing crisis. The solution is, not stop the overdevelopment. One of those solutions is stop the overdevelopment. But then this one representative, supposedly as this person, Representative Doug Miller, has a bill that'll get government out of the way to build more of these projects. We don't need more projects. We need to stop overdeveloping.
Exactly, Aiden. We need to keep our land.
And stop. And if you want jobs, the jobs, don't be giving them to somebody. Don't be giving them to people who are out of state. They're even doing it out of state. They invited folks from California to come here with that IEDC.
And here's the thing, the IEDC, I will say this, the IEDC, the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, when you bring in these big companies, and by the way, they're subverting our values, they're taking up the land, as you just said, Aiden, I'll put this out there because it's true. You're disenfranchising, and again, we're not trying to virtue signal, but we're trying to explain you're disenfranchising neurodiverse people like Aiden and I.
Well, it's not just that you're going after you're hurting small business.
That too,
the backbone here,
and ruining our land. And when this goes back to the conservatism, this goes back to God, ultimately natural law. It's why it works, because it's the solution. That the government is being circumstantial about things, and then they're telling us, whether it's people like Aiden and I or just anybody, whether we have or not, that you're going to enjoy this. This is what your future is going to be, and that's where government is overstepping their bounds, and this is why, going back to Micah and building the foundation with Indiana and America's children, that it really it's all about education. And that's one of the things that when you have this government bloat to this level, when you're taking away the land, when you're not helping the people here, by bringing in these big companies, by letting the
It's like if you're
by
going to
letting let competition happen.
Yeah, and if you're going to try to pick winners and losers and try to say, oh, this is such investment, couldn't at least dress the part to try to to try to at least make it more convincing, because right now they're not even trying.
It's all
shouldn't they dress professionally, because they don't seem to do that.
Maybe
I'm just picky, but I would expect a con man to dress the part.
I would too, and
just look deceivingly smart and well put together.
At least play the part of the career politician better.
Yeah,
say the least.
Exactly. And then of course, ultimately, if we tie it back to this, and I would even go a step further and say, that's why an issue like that, it needs to be addressed, and until
it does.
And so now we'll go to fun questions before we close this off. What is one thing we want to do beyond Autism Awareness Month? Well, I think that's a good question, right?
That's a good question. I'll let you go first. I'm putting you on the spot.
Lovely.
It's lovely, isn't it?
Yes, very lovely. Well, I guess, turning this into a full-time thing, that's the big one, and I would think that's your answer, too.
Correct. That's actually my thing. And because I realized I've had, we both have had this passion even before the Divine Intervention in 2023. And, to be able to, do this, to take care of our great state and to pursue our passion, that is one thing we want to continue beyond Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month. And I know there's been some different, it's not necessarily semantics, but I think there is some, okay, people accept it, but okay, there's awareness, but is there an acceptance? And
yes,
that's one of the niches that we see together. Even, for example, you want to talk about the big companies and stuff, and this isn't an Indiana exclusive issue. I mean, it's everywhere. And you mentioned the rhinos in Florida, where they're attacking Hope, Florida. But, being able to understand that for people like Ada and I, our brains are a little bit different, but we're living our God-given potential. We don't want to sit around forever. We want to turn our hyper-focus into something full-time.
That we can do.
And, the greatest thing we can do, turn it, like you said, turning into something we can do that that is our full-time job, which is, media co-hosting together in whatever, capacity that occurs. So I would absolutely.
And I'll go further. You mentioned the kind of acceptance. I would point out, and I think you pointed this out once before, our second lady, Susan Beckwith,
yes.
Shout out to her. She wrote something in her blog about disability awareness. She likes to talk about etiquette. That's one of her things, and she talks about that. She talks about etiquette, in that particular regard, which is great. So what's the second question we've got?
Excellent. Well, before we get into the second question, I just wanted to say, mention Second Lady Susan Beckwith. I absolutely agree that's one of the things that, I think, disability advocacy and also the etiquette is something. So if you haven't, be sure to check that out. It's on her blog, belleofthemidwest.com, and it's also on her socials as well. So the second question, Aiden, as far as this, what things, well, I would actually say this, what is the best part about overcoming challenges? And as part of that, what things are important to you, our listeners, even to us, to advocate for us? Or to advocate for whether it's us or our listeners?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think mostly the feeling of overcoming something, I think it's rewarding. It's very rewarding. I can certainly say that, because it's, it's a bigger step in a larger journey.
It is.
I think probably the most important thing is, having to, hold some of these,
career politicians,
yes. Certain ones in particular, you got to hold them accountable, keep holding their feet to the fire, as we have done. Some of our we have a little bit of antics of holding them accountable, and others won't do it.
That's true.
That's what you have to do as a good citizen. You got to hold them accountable. It doesn't matter. You do it to all sides. That's what you got to do. If you don't hold them all accountable, who's going to stop them?
Boom. I would second that. I wanted to elaborate on that, because that was actually a really good answer. Holding the career politicians accountable, like I said, we pulling back that curtain and shining a flashlight, but also to hold them accountable and to advocate, because it's great that we talk about all this stuff. I say that in a good way, but to actually say, no, you are just the career politicians, and like you said, Aiden, to call out, both sides and to not shy away from that, to hold their feet to the fire, but also to say, this is what you're doing, and here's the solution. If we get the real people, not the false opposition, in from various ways that plays out at the state and local levels, of course, federal, it is what it is, to the lack that anything gets done there, except for increasing the debt and trying to ruin our great country. But I think that's that's the thing to advocate for, is because I often think about our podcast. I think about the effect that we have. I think about, what is it like when somebody listens and, you get inspired by, being able to go to your local community, being able to go, whether it's here in Indiana or another state. Maybe you're somebody who has autism like us, and you've been defined by the career politicians, or you've been defined in your own personal life, and you're like, how do I explain this? How do I, whatever it is, and to, like, Aiden gave a really good point. Yeah, to hold the career politician's feet to the fire, but also to advocate. And that's one of the things we're, as Aiden likes to say, we're going to double down and actually triple down on. That's one of his favorite phrases.
Yes.
And my answer would be to never give up hope every day. I get up every day, as soon as I get up, and I think about, all glory to God, and just, I'm like, there's going to be, a lot of political battles. There's going to be a lot of advocacy. So my other part to that question would be to really advocate, speak up, and to do and accomplish. And as far as overcoming challenges, it's been a blessing to be able to do it side by side with you, Aiden, and to really just to be able to thank God every day for being wired differently and the ability to positively impact others. And so, folks, we are going to close out.
Yeah, I think that's everything for today. So
that is.
We certainly appreciate y'all coming on, and we will be back next Sunday as usual. And of course, follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and you can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. After all, I mean, it's been a big process. We are building up. We're also kind of on YouTube now, so look us up on there when you can. But thank you so much for listening. Hopefully next Sunday we'll have some fun stuff coming up.
That's right. We'll have some fun stuff coming up. So thank you so much, as always, everyone, for listening. God bless you all. Aiden and I are happy to continue our journey 100%, and we look forward to doing this again next week here on the Neurologic Podcast. Take care and God bless.